breakfast.
Alright, so just a disclaimer, this is a free country. It's your choice if you want to be fat or not. This video's purpose is answering the aforementioned question, not to tell you that your or another person's way of life is wrong. And also so I can get an A in my history class. Obesity everywhere is caused by people taking in more calories than they burn. When there is leftover energy, it is stored in fat cells. And some fat is good. It is actually really good. It's how we've evolved. So when humans were fighting to survive, it was beneficial to have some fat reserves to burn into in case we don't get enough food. But in 2024, we aren't hunter-gatherers anymore, scavenging for food. We go to school, we go to work, we sit on our lazy bums playing Hearts of Iron 4 for 6 hours at a time. We never need those fat reserves in our modern day lifestyles, since agriculture and technology have progressed so far. So what ends up happening is that when we don't use that fat, it just builds up around our waist, and more importantly, our organs. So some of the risks that complicate with obesity are that when the fat builds up around your arteries, it squeezes them, which makes the heart work harder to increase the blood pressure so that you can still pump blood through your arteries. So this leads to stress in the heart and eventually cardiovascular disease like heart attacks. And on the flip side, if the blood cells get stopped in their journey, especially to the brain, it can lead to strokes. And obesity also leads to NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is a chronic condition where fat just surrounds the liver and it exacerbates any ongoing issue or issues that show up with the liver. And then of course diabetes, where the body eventually evolves so that it can't process the sugar properly. Obesity is often defined with BMI, which is the body mass index, a simple weight divided by height squared calculation, with 30 being obese and 40 being severely obese. Something to note is that as studies go on, we might switch over to newer, more accurate measures of indicating obesity, such as the waist-to-hip ratio. Now that we've established some of the many risks associated with obesity, we can start looking at the numbers. According to the CDC, in 2023, 40.3% of American adults are obese, with a separate 9.4% being severely obese. Now, these numbers are pretty big, but what about other developed nations? The United Kingdom, similar to the United States in terms of demographics and lifestyle, has a 2022 obesity rate of 25.9 among adults, according to the House of Commons, and Germany only has a 19% adult obesity rate. To be even remotely close to the numbers America has, Hong Kong has an obesity rate of 32.6, but that's using a scale where a BMI of 25 or higher is considered obese, as opposed to a BMI of 30 or higher is obese in the West. So, due to societal structure as well as mainly genetic traits that cause Asians to have more visceral fat, which is the dangerous type that builds up around the organs, it takes less to be considered obese in a lot of Asian countries. So what is causing Americans to be so fat? The main causes I found over the semester are the sedentary American lifestyle, the fast and junk food economy, and the overall city planning which affects the lifestyle. As I go over this, I'll compare my time in America to my time in Hong Kong to find out what makes America fatter than the rest of the world. Now, each of these categories are inherently linked and they have compounding effects. I'll first go over the sedentary lifestyle of America. Deeply ingrained in the American identity is the freedom to eat what we want, the freedom to do what we want, and this has allowed us to subscribe to a lot of instant gratification. We want everything fast and convenient, and as technology has advanced, things have gotten maybe a little too fast, a little too convenient. And why would we wait for the bus or wait for the train when we can just drive wherever we want in a lot shorter time? The city of Los Angeles, where I am, has an 87.9% rate of vehicle ownership per adult, including me soon, and Hong Kong only has a 32%. And this has a lot to do with the city planning as well, but this affects how we live. A lot of the time that we're driving, we're sitting down instead of walking to go to the store, and those effects, they compound. So online shopping, while popular in Hong Kong with Taobao, but they don't come close to the 50% of American online shoppers, which I think take up 80%, which they make more purchases online than in person. And more Hong Kongers have to walk or take public transportation, which involve more standing. You know, you're walking to the MTR station, sometimes you have to stand on the subway, but in America you just sit in your car and you drive. You make that move for you. And this goes into the lifestyle, as the commute that Americans take to either to school or to work is often by automobile. When it comes to exercise, neither Hong Kong nor America's youth meet the recommended 2 hours of physical activity per day. However, less Americans meet that standard than Hong Kong kids. Only 11% of American youth use physical transportation to get to school, and only 10% of Americans aged 6 to 12 play outside. This shows that America's on a bigger trend, and only about 23% of the adults get the recommended amount of exercise according to the CEC. Americans on average spend 60% of their waking hours sitting or lying down, with older adolescents or the senior citizens spending up to 9 hours sitting, either at school or at home. The food in America also has a profound impact on why Americans are so fat. In America, fast food and ultra-processed food are significantly cheaper than fresh and natural produce. Government subsidies go towards corn, soy, and wheat, all grains, as opposed to fruits and vegetables. Lobbyists from companies such as Coca-Cola and Pepsi, which hold a duopoly on the beverage industrial complex, the NRA, the National Restaurant Association, and Mars Incorporated, a chocolate and snack conglomerate, all lobby the government so that they can get policies in place to support their business and their profits. Additionally, Kellogg's and General Mills, two large cereal companies, have lobbied to interfere with these government proceedings. These companies have lobbied against being transparent with GMOs, which are genetically modified organisms, so basically not telling the consumer what's really going into their products, and especially with keeping high fructose corn syrup in the limelight of junk food production. High fructose corn syrup is one of the products subsidized by the US government over more healthy forms of produce, and it is used in a lot of sugary beverages and candies as a substitute for cane sugars because it lasts longer and it's cheaper. So while high fructose corn syrup is regulated in Europe because it's not really good for you, in America it isn't because it's the company's freedom to use what they want to. So it's everywhere in the drinks you drink, the food you eat. And in an economy where cheap and fast food is more valued than quality food, it creates a society built on unhealthy foods, riddled with preservatives and chemicals, so that these companies that are lobbying the government can maximize their profits at the expense of we, the consumer. So if you ever think about why food dyes are needed in sodas, in food, in snacks, it's because the food's unappetizing. It looks bad, so you use artificial chemical dyes to make it look edible. So then, why would you eat the food? And I think what happens is that it's either not an option due to the economy being so dependent on these cheap trash foods, and yeah, it's a lot of time that people are lazy and we don't care to read the ingredients list. We're all guilty of it. But when you think about that, you're just putting dyes to make foods that already aren't good for you and using artificial colors. These are also bad for you. So some of the chemicals like Red 3 they've been known to cause cancer in rats. And they've been banned in all the cosmetic products like makeup and lipstick, but it's somehow perfectly legal to put in foods and drinks. You can eat Red 3, and you can eat Yellow 6, which is made from crude oil, and the base chemical contains benzidine, which is a known carcinogen, and a lot of the processes that are used so that to extract the Yellow 6, it leaves some traces of this. So Yellow 6 is a carcinogen, and it's legal to put in foods. And then another thing about America is the portion size. So when you compare to countries in Europe and countries in Asia, America's got enormous portion sizes. You can see this not only in fast food, but also family diners. So this is a meal from the American family diner chain Black Bear Diner, and then this is a meal from the Australian Dairy Company in Hong Kong. And yeah, they both tasted good, but look at the portions. Look at the caloric intake between these two, and the food were both filling. They both met the energy requirements, but one of them includes a lot of empty calories, and then the others is more filling. Finally, the city design in America drastically varies between America and other places in the world. America has invested massive amounts of money on the roads, creating highways with many lanes and having parking spaces on almost every street, as well as dedicated parking structures. This, combined with the inefficiency of public transportation, incentivizes people to drive, a transportation option that requires very little physical activity. The relatively high crime rate at public transportation sites as well also steer people away from taking them. When I was in Hong Kong, I found myself taking the tram and MTR, their subway system, everywhere I went. This had me walking to each station and then to where I wanted to go. Parks in Hong Kong, especially on the weekends with all the aunties exercising, are much more crowded than the ones in Los Angeles due to, I think, just people not wanting to exercise there. So, can we fix this? Of course. Now that we know the risks, we can start by setting an example by exercising. We can spread the word to encourage people who are fat and don't want to stay fat to exercise and nail in the points that it's going to be a slow process. It's going to hurt, but it's going to bring results. We can also make those who are obese know what helps complications they are in, but if they want to stay, still support them. It shouldn't get in the way of any friendships or relationships. And if the government refuses the lobbyists who push for these unhealthy dyes and high fructose corn syrup everywhere, then the economy can in return support the crops and more healthier foods. The U.S. Department of Agriculture can shift their investment focus away from the big grains of corn, soy, and wheat instead support the fruits and vegetables. Instead of increasing the taxes of what we earn, instead we can tax junk food and sugary drinks to further incentivize the companies to change their ways, and so that we can regulate their unhealthy aspects of their food. America can also create alternatives to automobile transportation by building efficient subway and bus systems and keeping them safe and free of crime, to not only uncrowd the streets but also keep people moving. With obesity in America still rising, especially among its youth, it seems that giving complete freedom to the food industry is only lining the owners' pockets with money and the people's stomachs with poison.